Welcome to Soul Portals again, and the general theme of Soul Portals is how we provide windows for each other. So today is a special Valentine's edition, the subject of conscious companionship, and we're pleased to have Nico Canon and Anastasiia Tumanova as our guests, and willing to share with us some of the joys and dynamics of their own marriage. I always open with an invocation, short one, which is, may the spirit flow freely through this conversation, allowing it to be both energizing and edifying. Amen. Another word on our podcast on Soul Portals, because both Deanna and I both have backgrounds integrating psychology and spirituality, so that's what we're all about, the synthesis, bring those streams together. And this is a really good occasion to see how it applies to relation canoes. I actually use the word relation canoe instead of relationship. Relation canoe is a lot more flexible and easier to navigate. Okay, so I like to lead off with a quote to set the tone, and this one comes from Leonard Cohen, who's from my hometown in Montreal, the poet, the singer, songwriter. And he says, this is very relevant. I think marriage is the hottest furnace of the spirit today. Much more difficult than solitude, much more challenging for people who want to work on themselves. It's a situation in which there are no alibis, excruciating most of the time, but it's only in this situation that any kind of work can be done. And I wouldn't agree only in that situation. That would eliminate all the, monks and nuns who, the context of community. But he's talking about our theme, which is relation canoes as an opportunity for soul work, and how we can be both windows and mirrors for each other. So before I get into your experience, brief, oh no, Deanna, you were going to ask about.
Yeah, I'm just hoping for a brief, one or two sentences each from you about how you summarize your soul's work. I mean, obviously you two do a lot of events and workshops, and you have a mission, obviously. So I'm just hoping for a summary of that from each of you.
So I can go first. In a succinct way, over the last decade, I realized that most of what we struggle with as adults, relationally, but also if we're on our own, can be traced to a decent degree to the dysfunction of our family, meaning the place, the structure that was supposed to hold us, lift us up, and be a solid way of support and nourishment is usually the one that creates a kink or a dent in our development. So without going too much into my history right now, I work especially with couples in distress. I jokingly say that I help people go back from cellmates to soulmates, because that's the reality that many of us live in. Like we may feel at times that we're sharing cells, we're in a jail, we're caged with somebody we don't like, but that was somebody that we loved at a certain point. So the core of my work is helping people in long-term committed relationships learn how to repair, how to set up certain structures for the relationship to thrive, and above all, how to, like, because you said the relationship canoe, it requires a lot of versatility, a lot of agility, and a lot of work. Like anything that is beautiful and worth creating requires a lot of effort and patience and attention. And for me, that's, if we don't see it as a spiritual
Journey.
path,
Yeah.
it's possible to sustain in the long term. It won't hold. So it's that helping people repair and hopefully transform the context in which they relate to each other. And I mean, in terms of methods, from online to live events, and for people who are maybe on the tail end of something very difficult, then we sit with plant medicine once a year with some elders, some shamans in Colombia, to go through an ayahuasca ceremony. This is like if you want to get it sorted out in 10 days and really get to the bottom of it. Yeah, that's, I would say that's the core of it for me right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So for me, I work mostly with women, and through a very powerful tool called Breath of Freedom, so breath work, helping them to reconnect with their heart, with their real desires that are coming from their soul, from their heart, letting go of stagnations in the body, emotions that were suppressed, maybe some memories, maybe some traumatic situations from their past. And I call this practice Breath of Freedom, because I like to, I love the word freedom, because this practice can literally liberate yourself, your body, from anything that is no longer serves you. So this is, right now I'm creating a program that is going to be like 10 weeks, and we're going to gather together and do a lot of different activities. But the main tool is the breath work, and I found it a very powerful tool. I would say people who experienced that, they felt like they had a psychedelic experience. And a lot of people who drank ayahuasca, they said that, oh, I feel like I drank ayahuasca again. So yeah, this is the main thing that I'm working on. And another part is also, we are organizing retreats also for Russian people. I'm Russian, probably you understood from my name. So that's the main things that I'm focusing on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a great title, The Breath of Freedom. Really nice. Okay, one thing we should remember on Valentine's Day is that romantic love was historically not associated with marriage. That's a very recent development. Marriage was marriage, and romantic love, not as we know it today, like emerged from the troubadours, and it was a spiritual path. It was the Western equivalent of Tantra. And a lot of the Platonic version was supposed to take place with a married woman, so that her husband took care of the rest, and you could focus on the mutual soul works. So briefly, I wanted to do a historical review to bring us up to having a couple like this in 2024. Because it's easy to forget or not know about the whole historical trajectory. So I did in broad strokes, so the first phase was marriage was just an extension of property and part of a religious covenant. And then as it evolved into something more personal, it became a role-playing transaction, completely embedded in social norms and cultural mores. Then coming closer to us, it became like need meeting fulfillment, meeting each other's needs. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And really recently, it's a vehicle for personal growth and evolution. That's very, very recent, to have two individuated people who come together to do their soul work. And you guys are a great example of that. So to give you like a can opener for speaking about your experience. There's so many models, there's so many models of for relation canoes. But I chose one of them, which is the 4 tasks you need to be a integrated couple and really doing your work. So it's not just standing with somebody. Of course, standing with is companionship, but you also have to be standing for something and standing for each other and standing apart and standing against. So I invite each of you to share in those ways how you've individually been doing that work and together. Like, or anywhere else you want to jump in to, evolutionary love relationship and how you're doing it.
So if I understand you correctly, like what are we standing for? Standing
With, standing apart, standing apart. The therapeutic word is differentiation, when you're able to stand apart from each other, be 2 persons in your own right, and sometimes standing against, standing against, holding your ground against the other. When you do all 4, you have a really strong foundation, or you're capable of doing all 4. Because if you're just, sorry.
Maybe the initial question could be, just based on what Cedric said, just that brief summary. What's the first thing that comes to mind for each of you as you hear, the summary of romance, and then bits about differentiation, standing together, apart, with, against? What comes up?
Yeah. The first thing for me is there's like a lot of nuance and social nuance as well as individual, and ultimately a relationship that thrives is one where, in my experience, there's a clear understanding that most of what we believe to be true about relationships is, I don't want to say wrong, but inherited, and by definition will never fit perfectly. It's like my great grandfather passed me his favorite shirt, but maybe he was a bigger man or a smaller man, and now I'm trying to fit in it. I'm maybe judging myself because I don't fit in it, or judging the shirt because it's too tight, not realizing that it needs adjustment. So I think that's the first thing for me, and is I would say that the true love requires first, or conscious companionship requires an act of rebellion, where I'm willing to at least put aside everything I've been taught, fed, and taught, everything that has been passed on to me about what it means to be connected to another human being. I would say that's the main thing, just because most people, I remember when we got married. So right now we have these rings. Maybe we can bring a little close. I don't know if you it's like a snake.
You can't see.
They're not very expensive. They're from an ashram in India that has great meaning to us. Consecrated rings, but they're not a $50,000 diamond.
Right.
And in many ways, I remember one time we had this conversation, because in Russia it is like there's a certain cultural expectation that the woman will carry a big diamond on her hand, and most people don't know that a ring was a thing of a contractual agreement, of a transference of ownership from the father to now the husband, and that's why the last name also changed. But we go through so many emotions by habit, just by routine, and we don't dare to question them. Not to say that there's something wrong with celebrating our love and our commitment and finding a worthy jewel to commemorate that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel that if it's done just by habit, just because that's the way it's done, then we're not conscious. Anything that is done by habit is done unconsciously. So what I rescue from that is that we need to look at like, how did we end up relating? Like, where did I learn whom I should be, the way I should show up in my relationship? And ultimately, you know, and I think this will probably lead into the, you know, what we stand with, apart, for or against. It's that ultimately we need to figure out like who am I, and who do I want to be in this space? And that's very private. And it can only work if we refuse to wear our great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers'
Yeah.
skirts and like make our own clothes.
That's
But making our own, we're gonna poke our fingers, and it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna have holes, and it's gonna be some like, right? It is work. So I'd say that's what comes up for me.
it's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a great metaphor, the grandfather's shirt that's too small for you now. And Anastasiia, sorry, Diana?
And it takes the concept of marriage, it differentiates the very concept of marriage.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And Anastasiia, what are your thoughts or feelings?
The first thought that came to my mind is, especially for women, raising their emotional intelligence to really learn how to handle their emotions, how to communicate them, how to express them, because we have them a lot more than men, and how to really honor your emotions, acknowledge your emotions, so you don't just throw it up on your husband or your loved ones in any relationship. So for me, this is one of the most important things, that when I take care of that, I can listen better, I can understand my partner better, I can be, I mean, I can be a better partner in many ways, just if I can handle and take responsibilities for my own inner state. And I see that for a lot of women, this is a difficult part.
I'd say that's you know, like this is a huge problem in most couples that I work with, and is that the standing with part is very entangled. It's like we're either codependent or like really pushing each other apart, but still attached to each other, right? Like, so this, or it's like, if I want to push you, I need to be touching you, I need to be holding you at, like, I need to be connected to you to push you. And if I'm clinging, just the same. And emotionally, this happens a lot, that like, with one of the vows that we have in our marriage is that, like, all of your emotions, all of your truth is welcomed. And just because you have an open space to share how you feel and what hurts doesn't mean you can do it violently. Just because you can share, one thing is to express your emotions, and another one to vomit them onto somebody, right? So, so there's that. Sometimes, especially I'm from Colombia, and there it's the way that we're raised is so populous, drama. It's like, it's just drama, a lot of drama. And it is kind of expected that a woman will snap, she will throw plates, close the door, burn his car, like wild things, you know, that in I guess more developed countries you think this is just like crazy. But in Colombia, this is culturally kind of accepted. Oh yeah, women are like that. It's like, no. Sure, there's a lot of emotional intensity that can bring fire and aliveness to a relationship, but it can burn it to the ground, right? So if you stifle it, like, the flame is gone. There's no aliveness. It can become something that is very what's the word? I'm missing it right. Sterile, right? If there's no emotion, it becomes very sterile. We become very proper. We walk around on eggshells. If there's too much, then we burn each other. So what Anastasia was sharing, I think, is part of our vow, which is we stand with each other in our full expression of what comes through us, how we feel, our wins, our challenges, our griefs, but we never, like, that takes me to one of our second vows, which for me was, I said, I promise to do everything within my reach to keep myself happy and joyful, so you are off the hook. And her vow to me is, and I promise to do everything that I can to take care of my mind, my body, my heart, my spirit, so much that you are off the hook. Meaning recognize that although what we do impacts each other, that ultimately we are responsible for our inner experience. And ultimately, my responsibility is to keep myself in such a good mood that however she's showing up, it's nice. And vice versa. Meaning
Right.
we can both have our own life without, and our own pain without crushing our partner under the weight of it, which is, I would say, in most relationships, this is one of the biggest
Right. That's part of
that you're the source of my unhappiness.
That's how it was before for me. I'm insecure because of you, you did this, or I feel fear because of you. With the time, I realized that I'm insecure because I have insecurity. And it's not about my husband or anything, because that's the same feeling I have in my work sometimes, in my, I don't know, family gatherings sometimes, or in my partners. So the feeling is there, it just finds expression. And usually the loved ones, the closest people to you, are the one who is like triggering those painful, unresolved traumas.
Yeah, again, what you guys are talking about is one of the outdated models, which is the missing half. You know, that notion of the missing half. And if you see somebody that way, then that gives them a responsibility that they don't need to have, that they shouldn't have. That puts the burden you were talking about, the weight. That you're not
There
a whole
was
person.
There was a movie, I'm blanking on the title, but the one of the famous quotes from the movie was, "You complete me."
Yeah.
And it has become romanticized. But we don't want somebody to complete us. That has to come from within.
Even on this Valentine Day, people say my second half. At least in Russia, we have that expression. Well, what are you going to give to your second half? Like, there's half is you and half is your partner. You're not complete.
It's, I mean, in today's world, I think we're so fragmented because everybody has a second half every 5 to 7 years, and then we get another. We're quarters by now.
I'm thinking, some of the people watching, maybe they're watching the recording another time, but they might be saying, "Oh my God, this is like the perfect couple." So it brings up the question, if you're willing to take the challenge, how are you not the perfect couple?
Oh, I can share that.
Let's share.
Yes. So, for example, something very present was just an hour before this conversation, we're sitting in our couch and we had a very difficult conversation from something that happened a couple of days ago that was not brought to full repair, and where emotions were lingering. And it was sensitive for the both of us, and there were like tears in our eyes, or just a bit of weight over what we experienced. And I remember Anastasiia looked at me and said, like, why did you decide for us to have this conversation? Like, how are we going to show up to this, to talk about love and relationships and conscious companionship, like after such a heavy conversation? And like, I stood up to start to organize the studio, and I said, I think it was perfect because like the number one key for a beautiful relationship is the ability to gracefully navigate conflict. And it's not the absence of it. It's just navigating it gracefully and learning how to repair quickly when we're not so graceful about it. So for us, there's so many instances where you know, I don't think perfection is a word that we use to describe our relationship. There are I'm trying to think of something very specific. Let's say there are emotions that are harder for me to be present to or witness. So I get overwhelmed very easily. That's when Anastasiia is feeling sick. I think part of me feels a little bit powerless and like I wanna in my mind I would like to fix her. Like just be healthy, just smile, just be happy. Just why are you making a long face? You know, and maybe I don't say it, but with my words I treat her like why are you making a big deal? Which, you know, destroys connection because I'm invalidating her experience. At the core of it is my own pain of being in the presence of somebody that I love in pain, right? It's my own inability to really be in connection with suffering, which is part of the human experience. And everything I do to try to avoid it and try to fix it in her. And of course, what this creates very often is the feeling of, for Anastasia, like that when she's sick, she's not welcome, she's not accepted, she's not loved, which then triggers insecurities of maybe abandonment. Like if tomorrow I'm very sick, like this is not a man that I'm safe with because he changes when I'm feeling off. And I'd say there's many spaces like that. We have a lot, like there's so much that is still unconscious within us that needs to be polished. And the perfection in my relationship, the way that I see it is like, I used to think that a perfect relationship is where everything is just smooth all the time. It just flows, it's effortless, you don't fight. And then now I realize that no, perfection is when even each other's shadows and demons can come up and there's a space to integrate that through love.
Right. Yeah, because you
There's
can't,
a robust,
sorry.
pardon?
I say you can't avoid the shadow work.
No, yeah, and there's there's many things that are not ideal in our relationship, but if one thing we've got, I think, like figured out to a very, very healthy place is like a robust way of dealing with conflict. That we know that whatever happens, it's like, you know, you have a ship that, but you know, you have like the team that patches the holes and takes out the water, and the team works so well that, you know what, we could hit an iceberg, we could like the biggest wave could come, we'll make it through. It might be unpleasant, it might be hurtful, it might take a while, but we'll make it through. And I think that's you know, there's so many things that are not perfect, but it works because we're stability behind that.
Nico, can I ask if you feel like you came to this knowledge and perception of relationships prior to being in this one or during this relationship?
Both. There
Okay.
was a lot of mistakes that I did earlier and lessons that came through a lot of pain that I caused myself or previous partners. So I came already with I mean, and I've been coaching around relationships for over a decade now. And I came with some knowledge about that. Some of that was embodied, some of that wasn't. But I will say maybe a big part of the growth has happened in the relationship. Because there's some things that before we met, I thought, I think I'm ready. I communicate well, I'm mindful of my emotions, like I meditate, I do yoga, I drink ayahuasca. Okay, like I think I'm ready for it. And then she comes and I'm losing it over little things. and it was hard because it takes humility to realize, oh, like I think Ramdas said, you know,
Yeah.
you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. And I think, you know, just spend a couple of days with your wife.
But you know, Ramdas also said uncooked seeds was his term for what you're talking about. You go in with uncooked seeds and then they get cooked once you're in the alchemical process there.
Yeah. Yeah. It is like in relation to the quote that you shared with us at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think relationships are very fertile soil, meaning it can very easily turn into a bunch of worms and something nasty because it's full of life, right? Like if life rots, it stinks. It's not the piece of plastic that you leave on the counter that a month later that smells awful. It's like the fruit, the piece of meat. Like the more life something has, the more it can be nourishing or just really stink. And I think because relationships are such a fertile soil, work can happen a lot faster, and it can hurt a lot more as well, right? Like it magnifies what's happening. So for me, definitely a lot of my growth has been in marriage, like coming up with parts of myself that I never faced because I was never so committed, because before I always had a way out, because before I always, you know, I could always enter the relationship and take a break or have some distance. And when there's no more hiding, then it's like, you know, you are forced to deal with it.
Mm.
It's the best spiritual journey ever.
Yeah, and we'd also like to know a little bit more about your personal journeys and how it led, you know, converged in the marital journey. But both of you, you know, have strong visions as individuals, and it's like joining forces. And so maybe a bit about, yeah, your psychospiritual paths that led to where you are now.
You want to share?
Sure. How many hours do I have?
Yeah.
Kidding.
Well, we'll have to do a workshop.
I'll try to remember. This is long. Starting with my childhood, it was how actually most of the people, I had a difficult time, very violent and abusive father, victim mother, a lot of drama, like from those Spanish movies. And when I was growing up, I started stealing a lot. So it was like a few years of even therapy at school, trying to get the attention of my parents, and being sick very, very often, fainting, and like health complications were also present the whole life. And then when I was growing up, I got an eating disorder, and it was one of the most painful 3 years in my life. One day, from a lot of pain, I just stood up and I went from Russia to Georgia by walk with my friend. We were walking a month there. So it was so much pain, and I was going to a psychologist and couldn't help me. Hypnotherapist also couldn't help me. I've tried meditation. I felt so much anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't go to the toilet for 4 days. It was so much. I felt lost completely. And then one day in Bali, actually, I was with my friend and I met Nicholas, and he shared about ayahuasca and how it helped him to overcome some addictions in the past and different things. I felt a big call to also do the plant medicine. And in the month, I was already in Colombia for the first time on the first ayahuasca retreat. That was like, I would say it changed my life. And now I can say life before ayahuasca and life after ayahuasca. Slowly, within maybe a year and a half, I changed my friends, I changed my work. I was also lost around that topic. I didn't know what to do. And I overcame an eating disorder. And then I started wondering about more like playing guitar, singing, you know, when the basic stuff was closed, more or less. I started doing more art, singing, playing guitar. And then I attended this retreat. It was the first Nicholas retreat with ayahuasca that he organized. And I met a woman. She was a yoga teacher, and I experienced my first breath work. I came out from that experience with my with a big smile and a lot of release when I realized that just through breath work, I just released so much pain, so much trauma, so much pressure from my body. I was blessed out from that experience, and that's, yeah, it's how I started being more curious about it, and started just breathing all the time, doing different types of breath work, and that's how I came to what I'm doing right now with other people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of relationships, I didn't have so many partners in my life. I was so close off, and I had problems in my sexual life, low libido, and actually I never knew anything about communication or how to listen to my partner. So everything I was learning with Nico. And when for the first time I experienced that actually he's listening, or he's asking, he's curious what's going on in my heart, right, during the conversations. Yeah, these feelings of safety, of deep love. I also didn't know that I could love. That was also a big question for me before I met Nicholas. I thought, I don't know, what is that? I don't know how to love. And yeah, I experienced all of this in my relationship with Nicholas, and I'm very grateful.
Mhm.
I
That-
know.
It's a great description of transformation. Because I'm asking because
Yeah.
I know that each of you must have been through your own journey of transformation before you joined forces. And Nico, time to plug your book because that's the story of your transformation and how it leads to what you're teaching today. But
Yes,
you can
yeah.
take a few minutes to summarize it. The headlines. Because we want to leave time for questions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, my story is there. Grace, in many ways, is the result of a journey where, like, at one point I thought I'm gonna end up in jail or dead or worse, you know, because I was hanging out with the wrong people, taking too many drugs. I was living a life that is very distant from the one I live today, where as well is led by trauma. It's a lot of alcoholism, drug addiction, sex addiction. At the time I was working as a tattoo artist, so it was also just an environment where there's all of that very available, quick, good money. So it was everything collided to create a soil that was fertile, and I just degraded after a very bad breakup. So yeah, like after a couple of overdoses, I woke up one day and I asked myself, what am I doing with my life? You know, just what's going on? Plant medicine was also, I think, the beginning of that, like realizing that things could be different, and then actualizing that, because the insight is never enough, but at least it traced a possibility, like, ooh, this is whom I could be if I get it, if I get my shit together. This is the man I can be if I actually get straight with myself. If I stop lying, if I stop being deceitful, if I stop betraying my partners, if I like start like caring, if I, you know, so many things. So it was yeah, like years later, I was actually in the jungle in the Amazon, visiting our elder. And in a ceremony, it dawned on me that, like, what I wrote in the book, but it was like, before I used to have so much resentment and anger and borderline hatred for my previous partner and what had happened, because I thought that, like, that what she did was like a curse. And I mean, I didn't believe in God back then, but I thought, you know what, this whole thing is just unfair. And then I realized in retrospect, like how much love life, the intelligence behind life must have had for me to like push me enough into the abyss so that I could like wake up from my slumber and decide to do something else, you know. Like it takes a lot of love to like with someone that you love, to treat them in a way that in the moment they perceive as painful or not compassionate or even unfair. But like at the tail end of it, I realized this was, you know, what I once cursed and hated and felt that it was, you know, God or life being unfair, was the biggest gift I had ever received, the biggest show of grace. And for me, that was like it brought a lot of things together around understanding that if you know, if life, I mean, I don't know if if it's okay to use swear words in this podcast, but if life throws a lot of shit to me, if I smear it all over me, I'm gonna stink and everybody's gonna leave me. But if I put it where it belongs, to the garden, to the roots of a beautiful flower, like something beautiful will come out of it. And it's up to me, you know, do I just drown in it and just kick and scream because it's unfair, or do I put it in a place where it can become a nourishment?
Right.
And that's a lot of people used to send me messages on Facebook or social media or email asking about little things. I'm going through this. What do I do? What do I do? And then I realized if I write a book with like the exact steps that I discovered, maybe that can be of use to people who are struggling with pain, like, because it's rough in the moment. It feels unfair. I felt like I was a victim of what happened. I felt that a victim of my mother's violence, a victim of my dad's indifference, so many things. And then to be able to come back like full circle and see it as a blessing, it was like it was liberating above all. Is it accurate? I don't know. Is it right? Yeah, I don't care about it, but it was freeing. Like it's a stance that I chose to take, that this too is nourishing for me. And it's, you know, maybe to also come back for 2 seconds to what we stand for in our marriage, is that especially what we dislike about one another, about the way we communicate, about what goes wrong, like standing for everything being a source of nourishment, a source of growth. Like this is also a stepping stone towards my growth, towards my freedom, towards me becoming a better partner or just a better person.
So we'll call you perfectly imperfect couple.
Yes.
This is a big question if you gave a headline, but just came up for me. Do you see yourself as on a path to becoming a shaman yourself? Yeah, I know you've been influenced by a lot of authentic shamans. Do you see yourself on that path where you would be considered a shaman? People would come to you for that, in that role?
So I remember I thought about it last time I was in Colombia, and then I had, quote unquote, the worst experience with plant medicine of my life. It took me all the way to heaven and then all the way to hell, and then I was like in this panic attack, paranoia, stress, overwhelmed, so many things. And then it showed me, say, oh, you're considering this as your path. Like, is this what you want? Because what a shaman does is like he knows how to dance without losing it. It's blissful, let's do it. It's hell, because people go to shamans to sort out their own hell. They're like,
Yeah.
the gardener that has to get their hand dirty when somebody else couldn't, like, put it with it where it belongs, right? And it really humbled me, and it showed me that I am far from ready. The amount of embodiment, the amount of connection to especially to nature, to my body, that is required is beyond where I am. And
Right. But the headline is you're pointed in that direction.
and above that, like in Colombia, they say like a true shaman is chosen by nature, not
Yeah.
they don't choose it.
Yeah.
It's like a politician. If somebody wants to be a politician or a leader, that person should not be leading. It should be, you know, the town. If the town thinks that you're the most qualified and wise
Yeah.
to lead people, you should be in
Okay.
charge. But if you want to be in charge, for sure you shouldn't be in charge. So
Yeah.
but I think it's a noble pursuit to like to live in a way that like to live with so much wisdom and inclusion
Mhm.
and joy. Yeah, like I would love to live closer to that idea. Whether I search medicine or not, that's not. I don't think. I think my medicine is my word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we want to leave time for some questions. You know, we have some time left for questions. John, I don't know if you moderate those from the chat.
I can do that. So we've got a bit of time. If anybody wants to pop a question in the chat, or maybe raise your Zoom hand if there's something that you want to ask, and we can get your microphone unmuted. I've been scribbling down a few things too, just in case there wasn't any questions, so I could maybe bring a question. But I just want to hold a moment for the group that's with us. Yeah. Not seeing any requests as yet. One of the things that was on my mind, is that okay, Dan and Cedric, if I bring a question?
Sure.
And of course for Nicholas and Anastasia to ask you that too. And one of the things that I was thinking about is like when we really lose that place of centeredness and like we get so activated, and I really appreciate you both talking about when things can get really difficult. And as humans, we can really get out of that centered place and lose ourselves into our anger or distress. And whether you had some ideas about how to come back to each other, like ways that you might have found to kind of return to each other and repair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is a journey, but the core of it, like at the core of it, is to really slow down. Like we're agitated, our breath, our attention, or everything is like spiraling out of control. The first thing is like just to really slow down and be vulnerable, which is the most difficult thing to do in that moment, because that is the moment where we feel the least safe. That is the moment where they are a threat, where everything in our system perceives him or her as a threat, as somebody who can take away my peace of mind, my health, my safety, my, you know, just there's this fight or flight response. So that I think biologically we want to fight back or run away, and those two things will create more damage. Now, becoming vulnerable is the hardest thing. Like, let's say Anastasia comes and says something nasty to me, or attacks me. In that moment, I want to like tell her how it is, or yell back, or maybe offend back, because I cannot sit with that pain, so I want to push it back on her. And if I slow down, all it takes is for one partner to slow down, and then both will like it has some magnetic pull. If I slow down enough and I realize like that hurt, you know, if it's 2 seconds of looking at her instead of like pushing back, like I allow for that energy to be processed in my system, and I say, "Oh, that was painful to hear." That's all it takes for the other person to kind of wake up also from their slumber and say, like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I did not, you know." And then we can come into a place that when it's lower, then there's the two adults have come back. Before that, it's probably like each other's toddler trying to have a conversation, right? So in essence, to slow down. And second, there's space and time for everyone's pain, but never at the same time. Like
Mm.
it's more like, okay, we're gonna focus on how you're hurt right now, how I hurt you, and then me. But if I try to prove to her how she hurt me, and then she's trying to prove to me how I did not hear her, it's like a race to who's the biggest victim. And
Yeah.
those two things are, I think, there's more, but the foundations. If I can slow down, and if we can like make space for each one to voice their hurt, then things can very, very quickly. It doesn't take too long to repair a connection, but it takes one courageous person willing to open up first.
Mm. You're invoking a lot of the key principles of couple counseling. There, in this audience, there's people who do couple therapy, couple counseling, and that's like a key principle, that the pause, and each person has their time to center on what they feel, and then and then taking turns to do that. Yeah.
And the other thing that's very apparent with the two of you is that you both bring that intention to the relationship. So there are a lot of couples who one partner hears what you just said, something similar, and tries to repair the relationship, and it doesn't work because it takes two people being intentional about this process.
Yeah, and
that's the conscious companionship.
Right. And
And
that's
I would say it is like, if I don't model it for my partner, especially if my partner doesn't know, because nobody's taught these things, like, but if I don't model it, how can I know if they are capable of it or not? Now, if I enter that place with that intention of repair, of being vulnerable, and maybe one time, 2 or 3 times it gets like stepped on, if my vulnerability just becomes an invitation towards them inflicting more pain, then I know we don't have a relationship. It's also the fastest way to get very clear on whether I should stay or leave a relationship. But most people never go there. They never allow it because it will be painful. But it's like, if you put your heart on the table, you can see very clearly what they will do with it. They'll for it, or they'll just smash it. And that will tell you everything you need to know about the person you are with and the decision you should make around that relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a win-win. If they don't join you, you save yourself a lot of trouble. If they join you, you have somebody that you can grow with, right? But most people never take the leap of faith. So there are these like they're never fully in or fully out, and that's most people's relationships.
Yeah, that's very well put. So we just have a couple of minutes. I want to conclude with another big picture model, because I think both of you are a good example of this. And it's another 4-phase conscious companionship model, which is going from self-centered, right? The self-centered about my needs, almost versus your needs, right? To other-centered, to being able, the capacity others-centered when there's a real respect for each other's needs, and the intention, like Deanna was saying, to meet them, and it's mutual. The next level would be us-centered, transpersonal, how our needs as a couple, feed the community and the family, the community, how it expands. So a sense of we, the couple, and then spirit-centered, what's needed from us, that we can respond together, that brings us into a stronger flame, a higher level. So from me to thee to we to three, the relationship of where there's a third principle. It's not just two, there's a third principle joining you, which is the spiritual one. So anyway, all to say, everything you said here and just your aura together, you're a good example of that progression.
Thank you, Cedric.
And then 1259, I have a closing blessing for Valentine's, for everyone, for the world, and beyond. So may unconditional love emanate from our heart chakra, allowing healing light to permeate our planetary home, encircling the earth out into the cosmos. Happy Valentine's.
Thank you.